Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's September 21st. This will be our chart lesson for today. And what looked like was going to be a really big sell-off turns out to be, really, if you look at it from maybe 940 for the rest of the day, this market rallied, and really it rallied strongly right at the last minute there. So, um, this was a huge rally right here. Of course, most of all that came after 2 o'clock, and you really didn't get a chance to. I guess you could have bought down here on this failed breakout, but if you didn't buy that, and I didn't mark it because it's really, you would have wanted to wait on something, a higher low or some kind of reversal type pattern, and this thing just reverses. And the one thing you could say here is even though this has a slight upward bias to it, this is still sideways action. This is still a range. It's just slightly tilted up. So it is a channel, but it's still, look at the EMA. It's got that range, that roller coaster look to it. Prices on both sides. So you really could trade this like a range. So that might get you in that trade. And we'll talk about it when we get to it. It's at the very end of the day. It's real late in the day. It's real, you're being a little aggressive there. You do have a close outside the new low, and it is the first break of that trend line. And this is definitely a channel. You can clearly see this is a channel working up. We had a little bit of an overshoot right here. We shot down and broke, and then we rallied from there. So there's two clear legs up to a new high right there. So it's perfect price action, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's typical price action. It's, you got two perfect measured legs up there. So that's perfect price action. Not typical, but perfect. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Quite a day. So I'm going to back out. We'll go through the trades. And considering how much price action there here, there's a good many trades, but there's not a lot today considering the amount of volume and price action. There's just a lot of times you had to be careful that it's just really hard. And notice this is actually a repeat pattern of this right here. This is, it's ever so slightly, actually you could probably argue that this isn't really pointing up, I guess. Maybe I've just got it off just a tad there. So maybe that's not really pointing up, but it still looks very similar to what you see right here on this bigger pattern. It's just kind of across there, but this definitely has a little more upward bias to it. So anyway, I'm going to back out. We'll talk about the trades and we'll go from there. I'm going to get on out so we can see this stuff. I really hate when you have to get so far out you have no idea, or you really just, we have an idea because we can see it after the fact, but when you back so far out you just can't see the big picture, and it makes it, I like for you to be able to see the big picture as we're talking about all this stuff, but it's just impossible to really get to do that and get far enough out here. So, all right. Well, let's talk about the first trade. Okay, we had the big downward bias, and we had the first break, and it looks like prices are trying to go higher, but you would expect a retest of that low. And you made this high, and you test it once, you test it twice, and so you got a little double test there. You got a nice bear. It's actually broke higher and turned down. You could have considered going short on that engulfing bar, but you're probably better off just to wait. And you got plenty of room back here, and you're expecting prices to go lower. You're not really, you're trading this. This is a range at this point, but it's got a huge downward bias to it, so we're still looking for prices to go lower. And that's a quick, easy trade, and you probably would have had a runner there. And you could have got several points on that one. And then, of course, we start bouncing down here. And then it's obvious we're still in this range. So there's a higher low here, but it's a little bit early still to be trying to pick a long here. Just on a higher low. You can see we got right back inside there. We make this higher low. So you may go long there. It's a little aggressive, but you can clearly see there's only one leg up, and that's the first break. And so we're probably looking at a second leg up, and it just kind of turns down there, and there's two legs down. So now you got a second entry long again at the lows, and you got a nice signal bar. So I finally like taking a chance on a long there. It's pretty obvious we got some strong support here by that time. Um, and then we actually make a higher low here, and this actually breaks lower and turns and goes out the other side. The only reason I made this one green is because that bar, that's a really big bar. I mean, this is the one you'd actually probably be considering. And there's 21 ticks in that one bar, so you got to buy up one tick above that, and your stop has to go one tick below that. So you're talking about 23 ticks that you're risking here. But we've bounced there many times, so it fits our criteria. There's a higher low here, but you're right into the middle of this, and it would have worked, but you see how it doesn't go very far, and that's what you have to contend with when you're buying in the middle of a range, because there is a downward bias here too. So, and of course, that's what happens. It doesn't go very high, and then it gives you a lower high, and this actually breaks higher and turns down. So it's probably going to trap some longs. It's a little bit congestive, so that's why I made it green. If it wasn't for the congestion there, I'd probably say, yeah, ride this back down to the lows. This thing just takes off, so this turns out to be a great trade. And unfortunately, you don't really get another chance to enter it. It just, the bottom drops out. And you might say, hey, there's a failed second entry long here, but look how congestive that is. Not really back to the trend line. And really, you could almost argue we got to close outside. Maybe you could draw that a little bit differently. Maybe you could draw it like this, because by the time it's over, it's not fitting well, but it doesn't fit much better. Maybe it fits a little better there. Yeah, maybe it is more like that. So, but it still doesn't give you a trade until here, and it's just not a good setup. So it doesn't really change anything. So, but yeah, I do believe that's more correct. I think I had, or that's correct. I don't think that's more correct. I don't think it's proper English. It's like saying more better. Is that right? So I think this is correct. Anyway, we bounce here, and you actually get a failed second entry short here. And so again, that's a possibility to go long, but look how congestive it is. And we're at this point, you would think we're going lower again. I can't remember, do we quite have? Yeah, we do have the break and a new low in place, so you could see a reversal right there. So the only problem I have with it is all the congestion. And really, you like to see this setup bounce off the top of the EMA. So again, that's probably one we could mark it green. If you took it, there's arguments for it. I'm just not crazy about it, because it's really hard to know exactly what's going on just at this point. It doesn't like a perfect reversal. And in a big, strong downtrend like that, you'd think we might get a measured leg, although we have met the criteria for a reversal. So we come back up here, and then we end up with a downtrend. But here's another opportunity. Notice that we came back to test this breakout. Notice when we came through, we didn't really test it. Prices will almost always. That's another reason to argue for a little long here, is the fact that prices are probably going to come back and test this, even if we're going to go lower. So, and that's what happens here. And we test it, and then you get a second entry short on a little double test there. It's really just a double top. We didn't make another high to come back to really argue for that being a double test. So I like going short there, though, just because you almost got enough room just back to the EMA alone. And we really are working sideways again here, but we come back and test this again and again, and you got another lower high, and that pretty much confirms what looks like maybe a downtrend channel. And if you draw it across there and drag it down, you can see it's bouncing off the midline. It seems to be looking really good, so I like that one for a short. And this one takes off. You get a really good trade here. Get a break, new low, and looks like we're going higher. But notice we haven't come to all the way down here yet, so you may get a couple of different trends down there, and that's what happens. You end up just getting a separate trend. And you'd measure that one. Look for a measured move. You can see we went a little bit lower after we met those lows before we reversed. This thing was really kind of weak. But you get a lower high here, And technically that's a second entry short. It breaks higher and turns down. And then you get your failure, and that looks like a more like a real reversal. And so I like that one. It takes it a minute to work on down, but it keeps going. And I just don't think you want to enter. There's a second entry short. I believe that's a second entry short. Let me back out a little more. It looks, but it's too congested regardless. So you can see that it is a second entry short, but it's just too congested. And then we finally hit, and you just don't want to go long right down here into this trend channel line, because even if he breaks lower, then it's not going to be long before it's going the other way. And I don't think you want to try to pick any bottoms down here. There's a little bit of a reversal here, not a very good one. And you can see it's just kind of working sideways. And then we're into the midline of this. We've already had a break of this and a new high, but you do get two legs up. But finally we get back up to this trend line, and again, no setup. And it's too bad because that's a great move down. So there is a second entry. Notice your new low, first entry, second entry. And if you had a good signal bar there, take that trade right off that key entry point. But if you're just patient, we suddenly get a first entry, second entry. Nice signal bar, quick, easy move. We bounce. And here it's really hard to know what's going on because you have the uptrend line. Let me back out. See, that's what I don't like about this. You've got the downtrend channel, but now you've got what looks like a slightly upward channel working here. Of course, it hasn't. I mean, you've kind of confirmed it off the lows, but we haven't proven it's really valid yet. And so there's not enough price action here to know if this thing's valid or not. So I like taking that second entry short right there. It's a little aggressive because it's a lower high off of that, and we're nowhere near the lows here, but we just made a double bottom here too, so you got to be a little careful. And then it reverses, and so that's a failed second entry short, and again, you might take that. Again, this is just, you can get chopped up in this stuff, so I think you're past this short. I think you were better off to ignore this, and then you don't really get a chance to go long here, and then now you kind of confirm that trend line. And you can kind of see prices. Notice how it gaps right there. That usually tells you your midline or trend line or whatever's in the right place. Notice how it closes on its low, opens on its high, and it doesn't even, sometimes it'll back up and overlap afterwards, but it doesn't even do that. That's a good sign that your trend line's in the right place, and you can see our midline there, and you can see it working there. So that really gives you confidence when this turns down right there that, hey, this channel's correct. So then we're dropping on down, and notice you make a high, you basically make a double bottom, but it's a double test because we already had that support. You test it once, you test it twice. It is a second entry long. You're working down first entry and then second entry, and it's a fairly nice signal bar. Now this is an engulfing bar. I don't know if it broke lower first and then turned up, or if it broke up and then turned down. I'm not sure about that one. But either way, you could have waited till it closed and then go long. I don't think I would trade that on an engulfing bar. I'd wait and see what happens. And then when you get this second entry long on this really nice bar, I like going long there. Then we come back and get a true double test of this level here. You can see we made the low and double test, and again, it's the same, it's almost a repeat pattern. Again, I don't know if it broke lower or higher first. I'm guessing it broke lower and then turned up. But just wait, because it's looking a little congestive here too. So wait, and if it breaks above this one, then maybe you go long. There's a higher low here, but now you're just a little too close to the highs. I mean, you could argue for that one. That's another one you could probably argue for it to be green. But I'd probably wait on something that's not right in the middle like that, because those will fail on you a lot of times. And then unfortunately you don't get a short here. If you'd had a good signal bar here on a triple test, I wouldn't have had a problem going short right there, because this is almost sideways. Like I said, even though it's pointed up, it's really sideways, and it's got that roller coaster look with prices above and below, above and below. You can trade those both ways. Too congestive here. But notice even this, you get perfect price out. You're working down, you get a close outside and two measured legs down, and then a reversal pattern. Go long right there. Notice that low, first entry, second entry. It's above the EMA, and that turns out to be a great trade. Too congestive, too congestive. Here you get a lower high again, not a very good signal bar. This is a market that's wanting to go higher, but it just can't. It finally does, and you see what happens. It gets this huge rally, but it's trying to go higher here, and it just can't. It sells off every time. But you're working down, and you got a little trend and a couple legs down. It tries to go higher, but notice you get a second entry short here. You get a double test. It pretty much right off the EMA. If you draw that trend line there, it kind of confirms that. Of course, you probably wouldn't be playing that trend line at that point. You could just move that out of the way because you're really just playing this this little range, this resistance here. It looks a little congested, but it's because there's all this resistance here. And you would expect prices to be headed down here anyway because we just came off the high. And it continues to work lower. Then you make another low first entry, and you get a break here, and you get a second entry again. You got all that resistance. You get a second entry short, bearish signal bar. I like going short right there. We run on down here, and you got this little congestion, and then we bounce. And like I said, even if you wanted to try to take this on a failed breakout, it's an inside bar. It's not very strong. It is a little bit away from the EMA, but I just don't think you can go long right there. And then here you're too far away from the EMA, and even though it works, so if you saw this and you missed it and you're thinking, people want to beat themselves up about it, there's just no way to get in that. So there's no safe way to take that trade. And when you see that and it's going without you, just wave at it and say, hey, I wish I could have been on it, but I'm not going to let it bother me because there's no way to get into safely. We'd rather miss a trade than take a bad trade and have a loser, which most of the time that'd probably lose on you. But this thing was wanting to go up, and it finally did. And when it did, and that got us in the 2 o'clock hour, but once it went up, we got two clear measured legs up. To the tick. And you can see that little two-legged correction right there, which is usually the center of the pattern. And that's exactly what it was. And it's to the tick. So, and that was it. So not a bad trading day. I had somebody sent me, I can't remember if it was on a post on the forum or somebody sent me an email, but they were saying, this looks like just a trap day. They're just taking it up and down and trapping everybody in and out. And there's no rhyme or reason, but there really is. Excuse me, I bumped my microphone there, and I know sometimes that roars out. So if I burst anybody's eardrums there, excuse me. But there really is. This thing is, even though there's a lot of sideways stuff here, this is relatively orderly. You can find this channel and it's playing out. Played out with, like I said, it's perfect price action. It's not what you normally see, how you normally see it do it, but it's perfect price action. And this channel tried to play out. It didn't really have to because you had the overshoot, and that led to a reversal. It was slow coming, but this one's working along, and you get an overshoot here, and that leads to a break, and then two legs up to a new high. So will we go lower from here? I don't know, but we're into the next day now. So, but it's perfect price action. And so this was not really that hard of a day. At times, I will say there's areas where you don't know what's going on, but we're going to have a lot of that as long as it remains real volatile like this. So don't let that bother you. Just when you're not sure, just sit tight until you can figure it out. But these channels were not real difficult to find here. Once you start seeing prices go down like that and keep making swings down, try to find it. Once we start noticing we're going up, try to find it. This one was real simple. This was fairly simple here. Of course, the lows are not consistent here, so it makes it a little harder. you still got a couple of, you still got one decent trade. You got a nice one off the high, and you got one decent one off the lows, and then we were working lower again. So then you got to be careful about longs until it was clear we were trying to work higher again. So anyway, that's what I saw today, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. I will say, just to make people aware, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, so there will be no mid-morning chart. I won't be in probably till after lunch, so I won't be trading tomorrow, and I won't be able to do a mid-morning chart because my appointment's early. I'm getting ready for my next surgery on my other eye, and hopefully I'm going to be back to really good, almost normal vision after that, but I still have another surgery to go through, and I'm going in for my preliminary stuff tomorrow, and then in a couple of weeks from now I'll hopefully have another surgery. But anyway, I won't be here tomorrow, so no mid-morning chart, and you probably won't hear from me till after lunch, but there will be a chart lesson. I'll be back in unless they do something to my eyes. I'm sure they'll probably dilate them, but even by that time, I should be good to go. Seems like last time I was able to come in and do a chart lesson, and I will unless I'm just not feeling good or something, so afterwards. But I think that's it. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow, hopefully. If I'm not, you'll know why, but definitely no mid-morning chart tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next